All right, this is your Gaza uh, War Day 97 sit rep. This is an unbelievable. It's the end of the day on January 11th, and I thought maybe we would be talking about the South Africa presentation to the International Court of Justice, but there are so many things that happened today that I might just this all I might do is state them, and that might take us the whole half hour just to state them. At the beginning of the day, Israel struck a civil defense, like a health facility on the Lebanese border. They killed at least two people, two paramedics. It's a center, according to one account I was reading, that serves Lebanese citizens, provides relief, treats the wounded. And that's what they attacked, a civil defense center in the town of Hanin, a number of injuries. And immediately, as has always happened, the Hezbollah struck back. Trying to restore deterrence, the escalation ladder, they struck back. They hit Kiryat Shimona, one of the northern settlements, with 30 rockets. And so we had that happen. That would have been a big deal had there not been many other events as well. So we had also the Iranians taking back an oil tanker, which the United States seized from them last year. The Iranians took it, they issued a court order, and this was an oil tanker that was stolen. The oil was stolen by the US. They claimed that it was their right to do that under their unilateral sanctions regime. And the Iranians took it back, which is something that I've never heard of happening. And so another major unprecedented thing that happened there. We had the Israelis commit a huge atrocity, another atrocity in Gaza, besides the attack on Lebanon. They apparently besieged a house with 60 people inside in Khan Yunis and then blew it up and killed everybody in there. 60 people, children, grandchildren, women, men, everybody. So then there's that. Then there's another attack by the Iraqis, the Iraqi resistance against a base in, I believe, northern Syria, Erbil, where they, no, it's in Iraq, Erbil, Iraq, and the Iraqi resistance is claiming that there were Israeli intelligence unit 8200 officers active there, and that's why they were hit. The Palestinian resistance also downed an Israeli drone, the Skylark drone, and there's a couple of videos which you'll probably see that they released. One was of an ambush in Sheikh Radwan at a tunnel entrance, and another was a whole bunch of rocket-propelled grenade attacks on tanks, the Yasin 105 attacks on tanks. Some footage that would be beyond belief, again, if it were not for all the other unbelievable things that were going on also today. So the main thing, which you probably know by now, is that the United States, the UK, Canada, a whole number of countries got together and bombed the port of Hodeida, Sana'a, a whole series of places in Yemen. So the idea is that this is in revenge for Yemen, preventing Israeli ships from going to Israel, for preventing traffic through the Bab el-Mandeb, the straits to the Red Sea, and forcing all the ships that want to go to Israel all the way around the Cape of Good Hope in Africa. Um, so the United States and the UK, etc., have been threatening Yemen since Yemen took this action, since the Ansarullah in Yemen took this action, the so-called Houthis, since they took this action and took the Galaxy leadership and stopped shipping from reaching Israel, and the US has said there was going to be consequences. They started talking about airstrikes today, and then they did it. So they have conducted airstrikes on Yemen, all over Yemen, and maybe this is the start of World War III. I mean, it is an action that involves the United States directly in belligerent action on Yemen, something that they didn't even do. Everybody knew that they were behind the war, the Saudi Arabia war on Yemen from 2015 to 2022. Everybody knew that, that it was their planes and their mercenaries and their weapons, their bombs being dropped. But this is a direct war attack on Yemen by the United States, all in order to defend Israel from Yemen taking action against Israel for the Gaza genocide. Yemen, Ansarullah has been very explicit, very repetitive about their message that they were going to stop ships from getting to Israel as long as Israel was stopping all food, water, electricity, etc., from getting to Gaza. Rather than doing that, rather than imposing that on Israel, the United States has chosen to bomb Yemen. I said on Twitter that this is basically bombing for the sake of bombing. They're bombing Yemen so that they can try to impose consequences on Yemen for trying to impose consequences on Israel for bombing Gaza. So we've got a real meta bombing here. We're bombing for bombing. I want to read you a couple of things off of Twitter. I know this fulfills the old stereotype of the internet consisting of 4 websites, which are screenshots of the other 3 or whatever. But this one I saw, which I thought was a pretty good read. I advise Americans and British people to familiarize themselves with some points about the Yemeni fighters. They don't follow your movies and TV shows at all. They're not bothered by your media or social media distractions. Psychological warfare is useless against them. Their life since childhood has been to fight America. The last will and testament passed down from their ancestors is to liberate Palestine. They have 4 to 5 wars of military experience in various terrains. They've all written and recorded their life wills. Their poets glorify war more than any love, flirtation, or romance poetry. They all obey their leader with absolute obedience. Their only fear is the punishment and wrath of Allah if they fail to support the people of Palestine and backtrack on their report. So that's one really stark point. And another one, though, was a statement by, I mean, Yemen has also already started attacking the other American and British targets in the Red Sea. And they said, you can now, congratulations, you can consider the Bab el-Mandeb closed. Yemen is prepared for this. But there was an amazing statement by the leader of Ansarullah. I haven't confirmed it, but I have seen it from 2 different places and 2 different translations of it. So let's read the whole thing, because so here it goes. Do the American, British, and Zionists expect that any aggressive act against Yemen will distract us from defending Gaza? We swear, even if we turned into atoms scattered in the air, we will not leave Gaza. We will continue to target Zionist ships and those going to the Zionist entity. We will confront America, make it kneel, burn its warships, all its bases, and anyone who cooperates with it. No matter what it costs us, we will not leave Gaza. Let the great war ignite, for we are its people and its men. To our people, our brothers, our sons, and our fathers in Gaza, we are with you. You are not alone. Our blood for you is cheap, and we are with you until our last breath. God refuses for us to be submissive and humiliated while your blood is spilled. What will God say to us when we meet him? You have maybe a mistranslation here, but by God, we will not let Gaza down, whatever it costs us. The world must prepare to hear of America's defeat. We will trample America under our feet. The battlefield will teach those who do not know us about our might and severity. We will not warn or threaten. Wait for what will heal your hearts. So if the idea was to do a bit of bombing to get Ansar Allah in Yemen to back down, I think that was a mistake. This is by igniting this war with Ansar Allah. Oh, by the way, I don't know if I mentioned, but Iraq has also attacked with long-range missiles directly targeting Israel again, which is something they did shortly after the Lebanese missiles that took out the Meron air surveillance base in Israel. So we have things happening already that get us into possibly the beginning of World War III. And we have the likelihood is that there will be the usual Friday gigantic demonstrations. This is what people said about of 1 billion people in Yemen in solidarity with Gaza, and they'll start to we'll start to climb the escalation ladder in the Red Sea now with the U.S. Navy and the Yemen Ansar Allah. And remember, Iran is in the Red Sea now, and so are many others. But this is an escalation of the naval war, which the United States embarked on this very day that South Africa brought its case and made its arguments to the International Court of Justice. Okay, so I think that was the events of, I don't know, the past 10 years, which feels like 10 years, but it was just today. And so we'll see how things develop tomorrow. Israel's going to defend itself in court tomorrow, and we will probably see more of what Iraq, resistance, Yemen, Ansar Allah, and who knows what else. I'm sure we'll see more fighting in Gaza, because we've seen fighting in Gaza, continuous fighting in Gaza as well. Statement of the White House says the following countries took part in the attacks on Yemen: Australia, Bahrain, Canada, Denmark, Germany, the Netherlands, New Zealand, South Korea, the UK, and the US. So mark that down on terms of what those countries were doing on the day that Israel was in The Hague defending itself from accusations of genocide. I should say a few words about the court case. You all want to hear about the court case. You know, I watched the court case. I have a worldview that I've been expounding, which there's a reason that these updates are not about the state of international law with regards to the conflict. They are military analysis for a reason, because that's where I believe, and it's not what I want, but it is how I think the world works, that is where I believe this is going to be decided. It's going to be decided on the battlefield and not in the courtroom. However, how can we ignore the law? Can't just blow off the legal battle. We can't blow off the law. We know that law and rules and structures like this matter a lot. We know that every state, every army, every organization has to work through a system of rules, and that those rules include the laws, the conventions of war, even if they're ignored, even if the rules are broken, that doesn't mean the rules don't matter. Even if the US and Israel are very cavalier about how they break the rules, that still doesn't mean the rules don't matter. That still doesn't mean these consequences are not real. So yeah, I watched the arguments, and it was really it's validating. It's a good feeling in a lot of ways. It's a horrible feeling to hear it all summarized, that what we've all been following for the past 97 days. But it's hearing someone lay out all of the things that you have been seeing, hearing someone tell the truth, just tell the truth in the context of so many lies and so much disinformation, and each of those lawyers just stepping up and describing everything that's been happening, what they want to see, how they want to see a stop to these things. How they also said things like international law is on the line, this court credibility is on the line. If we can't find for what they call these provisional measures in this case, then the credibility of this court is completely on the line. And I agree completely with all of that. I just the reason for my cynicism has to do also with the fact that I don't see that failure as being in the future. I see that failure as something that's already happened. I see that the failure of international institutions and international law as something that has already long since been the case. And I don't see this as like the credibility of international institutions is on the line. I think the credibility of international institutions is gone. And what we're looking at here is some attempt to salvage something. On the other hand, again, there is some there will be consequences that flow from this. There will be consequences in terms of legitimacy, in terms of international relations, that follow from even if the whole thing ended today. And I think tomorrow Israel's going to mount some kind of defense based on human shields, based on all of its doctrines that it kind of makes up on the fly, the right to defend itself. And in South Africa, those lawyers, and they answered all of those they anticipated a lot of what Israel's probably going to say tomorrow. They said, it doesn't matter what happened on October 7th, you're not allowed to do genocide as a response. It doesn't matter that you're trying to do it carefully. There's no careful, it's not acceptable to do genocide even if you're careful. And so they went through all of the possible defenses, I think. Well, we'll see. And so I think tomorrow, just as refreshing or validating as it feels to hear the truth that they were speaking, the lawyers for South Africa, I think tomorrow is going to be a very sickening day to watch. I probably am going to watch. Maybe I could just read it. I'm not sure, but I'll try to come back to you guys tomorrow, and we'll talk about the defense as well. And there'll be, I'm sure, many, many, many other things going on. So yeah, like I thought, talking about this has taken just describing what's happened on all these fronts, and maybe we'll have to do a kind of a 6-front update each time. We'll do Lebanon, we'll do Gaza, we'll do Yemen, we'll do Iraq, we'll do Syria, and then we'll do maybe we'll do the legal front, depending on how that goes. But there's one last point that I kind of wanted to say, and another refreshing thing that the South African lawyers really understood, which has been bothering me a lot, because I've always felt like people don't understand this nearly enough, or emphasize this nearly enough, which is that the issue Gaza has is that makes the genocide in Gaza so unique, is that, lots of places bomb, right? Russia's bombing Ukraine. Ukraine was bombing uh, Donbass. Um, there's lots of bombings. There's lots of wars that involve bombings. Right now, those are the only ones that I can think of that are actively happening right now. But Israel controls all entry and exit from Gaza. And that's, in some sense, the most intolerable thing. That every time they bomb, they return in between bombings to a situation where they control access by land and they prevent access by sea. And I've thought that when the end of the siege of Gaza finally happens, it's probably going to happen with probably I imagined an Iranian ship, maybe it'll be a Yemeni ship, an Iranian ship sailing into the port of Gaza and saying from now on, Gaza's a port and people can come and go as they please. And once that happens, the whole situation that Gaza's in is over. And in a sense, we'll know that it's over because Gaza will have access to the sea. They'll have an outlet to the sea. And then at that point, the siege will be over forever. And so there is, in these military analyses, we've talked a lot about tunnels. We've talked a lot about bombings. We've talked about genocide and attacks on civilians taking place in parallel with this guerrilla war that Qassam, Hamas's armed wing and the other armed factions have been fighting against Israeli armor in particular, but against Israeli infantry all over, mostly the north of Gaza, but everywhere now. But there's also a naval dimension to this whole conflict because the conflict, I think, is going to end when Gaza gets a port, which means that everything that's happening with the Iranian fleet, and especially Ansar Allah and what they're doing in the Red Sea, everything that's happening in that naval, and now the naval war that's just kicked off thanks to the US bombing Yemen and having all their ships there, the naval aspect to this whole conflict is decisive. And in some sense, this bombing of Yemen has accelerated the resolution one way or another of the conflict, because it's accelerated what's going to happen on the naval front. And so it's this incredibly dangerous, tragic situation. And of course, Yemen has been bombed enough. Yemen is one of the poorest countries. Yemen was also besieged. Yemen was also destroyed. Yemen is, like Gaza, is this country of incredible agricultural potential, of incredible natural wealth, of incredible cultural wealth, of incredible ingenuity that has been, whose talents have been suppressed and squandered by this choking off through the siege. Israel's siege of Gaza, the US, UK, etc., Saudi siege. Now, Saudis have stayed out of this. You notice their name wasn't on the list of the 10 countries. Saudis are the most vulnerable to what Yemen can do. And Saudis immediately put out a statement saying, we urge calm. We don't want to see this get out of control. So it seems to me that the Saudi-Yemen ceasefire is holding, which also denies Ansar Allah quite a few juicy targets and ways to hurt the US. But I'm sure they have many options and many things that they are contemplating now, and it appears to already be fighting, as I said, in the Red Sea. So there's yet another thing that happened before I go to talk about, which is in Iraq, the Iraqi president or the head of state, I think he's the president, let me check, al-Sudani is his name, which means from Sudan. Mohammed Shia Sudani. He's the prime minister of Iraq, and he gave a speech a couple of, I think maybe yesterday. Again, so many things, and so it's so little time. But Sudani, he said something like, um, "We want the Americans to leave." He said we have to reorg. He said we have to reorganize this relationship so that here, let me show you. This story is basically Iraq, January 11th, Iraq seeks quick exit of US forces. And the quote in this thing is, there's a need to reorganize this relationship so that it's not a target or justification for any party, internal or foreign, to tamper with stability in the region. So that sounds, on the one hand, that doesn't sound, what exactly is he saying? But on the other hand, what he's saying appears to be, until you leave, it's, there's one way of reading what he says is like, we want you to leave so you're not targeted, which is almost like a polite way of saying, as long as you're here, you're going to continuously come under attack. And it's almost like a licensing of those who want to attack US troops and US bases. So in Nasrallah's speech, which I covered on a previous sit rep, and Nasrallah's going to do a speech again on Sunday, apparently, so in a couple of days. But in Nasrallah's speech, he said something like he thinks that Iraq has a chance to get rid of the US occupation, which has been there since 2003, and of course the destruction and sanctions since 1990. So these are just the scale of the events that have happened in the past 24 hours is hard to contend with, and a lot of it, a lot of it the internationalization of it, the regional war aspect of it, and maybe we'll find that today, today was the day that the regional war really kicked off. I've been saying that the regional war started on October 8th, when Hezbollah opened the northern front and started the kind of tit for tat war of attrition on the northern front, starting with the surveillance infrastructure. But then the Yemenis entered. The US brought all of their fleet on day one too, right? Or day one or day two, they brought they brought a couple of aircraft carriers and all these other naval assets. And then right under their noses, Ansar Allah started to prevent shipping from getting to Israel. So and Iraq and Syria resistance groups were attacking US bases. So the regional war is on. And like I said, maybe this, I will try to give you updates from each front as we move forward. Are there any other things to tell you about today? I mean, I'm going to go back now and see what else has happened in Yemen and in the Red Sea. And in a few hours, we'll be hearing from Israel in terms of their defense. And so I'll leave it there for now, and we'll be back very soon because events are moving very quickly.